I've been alone here for almost 10 years. 10 long years, watching the sea, tending the light. Most people think of lighthouses as symbols of hope, guiding sailors to safety. But for me, this place is something else entirely. My name is Eli Marston. I was given this job after the old keeper disappeared, just vanished, without a trace one night. The authorities said it was probably an accident. Maybe he fell into the sea. But the villagers, they whisper different stories. They say this place is cursed. Life here is simple, repetitive. Every day, I climb the stairs to the top of the tower, light the lamp, and wait. The days blur together, one after the other. The only company I have is the endless crashing of waves against the rocks below. At first, I found it peaceful, the solitude. But after a while, it started to feel like something else, like the silence was waiting for something. And then, the dreams began. At night, I dream of the sea, but not the calm waves I see during the day. No, in my dreams, the sea is alive. It calls to me, a low endless hum, pulling me toward it. I can hear voices in the water, whispering my name, over and over. Sometimes, I dream of the old keeper, standing at the edge of the cliff, staring out into the storm, just before he vanished. And when I wake, I swear I can still hear the whispers. I tried to ignore it at first, telling myself it was just the isolation playing tricks on my mind. But then things started happening. It started small things moving around when I knew I hadn't touched them. My lantern would go missing, only to turn up in the place I swore I had left it. The sound of footsteps on the stairs, when no one was there. But then, one night, while I was sleeping, I woke up to the sound of the lamp going out. I rushed to the top of the tower, thinking something had gone wrong with the mechanism. But when I got there, the lamp was fine. It was as if someone or something had turned it off. And as I stood there in the dark, I felt its eyes on me, watching from the sea below. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, staring out at the black water. And then, I heard it. A voice, faint at first, but growing louder. It was coming from the sea, carried on the wind, whispering my name. I froze, heart pounding, unable to move. The voice was calling me, telling me to come closer, to look down into the water. I don't know why, but I felt compelled to listen. I went to the edge of the cliff, peering over the rocks into the dark waves. And there, in the water, I saw something. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, a shadow moving beneath the surface. But then, it looked up at me. Eyes, cold, hollow eyes staring straight into mine. It was waiting for me. After that night, things got worse. The voice became louder, more insistent. I stopped sleeping, too afraid of what I might see in my dreams. During the day, I could feel it, lurking just beyond the shore, watching me, waiting for me to slip, to fall, like the old keeper. The villagers stopped coming by with supplies, leaving them at the edge of the forest instead, as if they were afraid to come too close. I don't blame them. Sometimes I wonder if this is what happened to the old keeper. Maybe he heard the same voice, saw the same thing. Maybe that's why he disappeared. Or maybe he didn't disappear at all. Maybe he's still out there, just like me. And then, last night, it came for me. I was sitting in the tower, the light glowing faintly in the fog, when I heard the footsteps again, slow, deliberate, coming up the stairs. But this time I didn't freeze. I grabbed my lantern and went to the door, flinging it open. The stairway was empty, but as I turned back, there it was, standing at the window, staring out at the sea. It was the old keeper, or what was left of him. His clothes were soaked through, his skin pale and bloated from the water, his eyes dark and lifeless. He turned to look at me, and in his hand, he held the lantern. My lantern. He smiled, a slow, terrible smile, and said, "It's your turn now." I stood there, frozen, the lantern in his hand, casting long, wavering shadows across the stone walls. The flame inside it flickered wildly, like it was struggling to stay alive, just as I was struggling to hold on to reality. His words echoed in my mind, "It's your turn now." What did that mean? Was he asking me to take his place? Or was it something worse, something far darker? I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. My throat was dry, my body rigid. The figure of the old keeper, if it was really him, took a step closer, his wet boots squelching on the stone floor. I could hear the dripping of water from his clothes, like he had just climbed out of the sea. And that smell, that awful, briny stench filled the room, overpowering everything else. It was the smell of something that had been lost beneath the waves for far too long. Something dead. He reached out, holding the lantern toward me, his fingers pale and shriveled like they belonged to a drowned man. "Take it," he whispered, his voice barely more than a rasp. "It's your turn to keep the light." My hand moved without thinking, as if it were no longer mine. I grasped the handle of the lantern, feeling its cold weight settle into my palm. The moment I touched it, a chill ran up my arm, sharp and icy, as though the sea itself had wrapped its fingers around me. The old keeper's smile widened, and I saw something in his eyes, something ancient, something that had been waiting for far too long. And then, without another word, he turned and walked toward the open window. I wanted to call out, to stop him, but the words stuck in my throat. He reached the window ledge and climbed through it, stepping out into the night as if he were simply walking across a field. I ran to the window, my heart pounding, expecting to see him fall into the dark sea below. But he didn't fall, he vanished. One moment he was there, and the next, the fog swallowed him whole, leaving only the crashing of the waves and the endless stretch of black water. I stood there for what felt like hours, clutching the lantern, staring into the void where he had disappeared. The wind howled around the tower, rattling the shutters and making the walls groan, but inside, it was deathly quiet. It was then that I heard it, the low hum, the whispering from the sea. "Come to us, Eli." My name, the voice from my dreams, now clear and real, drifting up from the waves below. I backed away from the window, my heart racing. The lantern in my hand flickered, its light dimming as though the darkness itself was hungry for it. "Come to us." I turned, stumbling down the narrow staircase, the sound of the sea growing louder, the whispers becoming a chorus. I don't remember reaching the bottom, but suddenly was outside, standing on the rocky shore, the cold wind biting through my clothes. The sea churned in front of me, wild and violent, but there, just beyond the rocks, I saw them, figures moving beneath the water, pale shapes, half hidden in the depths, rising and falling with the waves. Their faces, hollow and lifeless, stared up at me, mouths moving in unison, calling my name. I felt the pull, stronger than ever before, dragging me toward the edge of the cliffs. Pale shapes, half hidden in the depths, rising and falling with the waves. Their faces, hollow and lifeless, stared up at me, mouths moving in unison, calling my name. I felt the pull, stronger than ever before, dragging me toward the edge of the cliffs. "Come to us." I felt myself slipping, my body swaying forward, toward the edge. The rocks beneath my feet were slick with seawater, and the waves crashed violently below, waiting to claim me. The wind whipped around me, cold and sharp, and in the distance, I saw the light from the lighthouse flicker, as if it too was struggling to stay alive. I don't know how long I stood there, staring into the abyss, but in that moment, something changed. The whispers quieted, the pull lessened. I looked down at the sea, and the pale figures were gone, replaced by the dark, endless water. The wind died down, and for the first time in weeks, there was silence. I stepped back from the edge, my heart still racing, my mind a tangled mess of fear and confusion. I turned back to the lighthouse, the towering structure that had been my home for so long, and I felt it a shift, something deep inside the stone walls. It was watching me now. I picked up the broken lantern, its glass shattered and useless, but the cold metal still heavy in my hand. I knew then that I couldn't leave. The lighthouse had claimed me, just as it had claimed the old keeper and all those before him. It was my turn now. I walked back to the lighthouse, my legs trembling. The sound of the waves, a distant hum behind me. The door creaked as I pushed it open, the air inside thick and stale. I climbed the stairs, step by step, the weight of the lighthouse pressing down on me. When I reached the top, the light was still flickering, weak and fragile. I stepped forward, feeling the cold stone beneath my feet, and I knew what I had to do. I stood before the great lamp, and in that moment, I understood. The lighthouse wasn't just a beacon. It wasn't just a guide for sailors lost at sea. It was a trap, a prison. And now, it was mine. The light grew brighter, filling the room with a cold, unnatural glow. The walls seemed to pulse, the air thick with the weight of centuries of isolation and madness. I reached out, placing my hand on the lamp, and felt the chill run through me once more. It was my turn. I stood there, watching the light, listening to the silence that followed, and I knew one thing for certain: I would never leave this place. Thank you for watching. I hope this story kept you on the edge of your seat and left you with a sense of wonder and mystery. Until next time, take care, and remember, some places hold secrets best left undiscovered. Stay safe, and see you again soon.